Welcome to Becoming a Calm Parent. I'm going to go over tonight some tips and tricks on how to keep your cool when you're dealing with your kids. I want to start out first by talking about how we get mad, what makes us mad. There's lots of things that make us mad, and I'm going to talk about a couple of different categories. I just want to go over it. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about what makes us mad because you guys probably already know, but I want you to think about the categories of the kind of anger that might be in your house. First might be defiance and attitude. This is usually a category that's for middle school, high school, maybe elementary school and stuff like that. Usually not preschool, but it could be, but where they're disobeying you, they're just ignoring you. I think toddlers and all ages are pretty good at ignoring what mom and dad has to say. It can make us really upset. Disrespectful, they just treat us mean, treat us as if we're dumb. That's usually for older kids as well. We get a lot of grief from and complaining from our kids. That can really upset us. Having to continually ask them to do something is a problem for us, and we typically will get, it's not unusual for us to get mad. Not accepting consequences. When we give kids the consequence, we want them to do what it is that we've said, and we get mad when they don't. There's another category of where we get extra work from things that our kids do that make us upset. It might be like this little girl in the picture. I don't know if you guys have ever had goldfish spilled all over your floor, but maybe something that is a spill or an accident, or it could be, I had a lot of parents in COVID when everyone was sheltering in place. They were getting really mad because their kid kept coming out of their cubby or whatever and asking for snacks all day long. And it was just really upsetting to the parents. Not picking up their toys or clothes. It's like, we feel like we're cleaning up all the time after our kids. And that's really annoying. I know for myself, when my kids were growing up, I have two boys in their 20s. And I felt like I was a cleaning lady. Like, who likes that? Not me, for certain. There's other things that happens that wear us out. One of the things that really wore me out was whining. Like, it just wears me out enough that I could get upset. And not doing homework or schoolwork, which if you're in preschool, you probably don't have too much of that. But some of you have older kids that you're probably, fighting about with that. Kids screaming at the top of their lungs. I was very thankful that God gave me boys, because that scream that seems to be coming more from little girls than boys, that high-pitched scream, I get upset when I hear that. It just drives me crazy. Good old sibling fighting, that really can wear us out, can't it? So that was just like, okay, I'm assuming that one or two of those things might be something that make you upset in your own house. I want to talk now about what it is that we do when we're mad. A lot of us might start yelling if we're mad. We might start telling our kids what to do and kind of get upset. We might start nagging our kids when we're getting mad, like they didn't pick up this or that, or they didn't sit at the table, they're up at the table, they're not sitting down or not going to bed or whatever. And we might want to punish them when they get mad. It's like, you didn't do this, so I'm not going to read you books or something like that. I want to talk about, does it work? Nagging, yelling, and all that kind of stuff. We're going to talk about each one of those. First, I'm going to talk about yelling. Does it work? When we yell at our kids when we're angry, does it work? I think that it does sometimes, but there's complications that we don't really think about. And I think one of the complications that it creates fear in our kids. Because if you are a young child being yelled at by a big person, it's quite often that as that parent, meaning us, are yelling louder, that we might get obedience out of our kid. But is it the kind of obedience that's because of fear of retribution or something like that, fear of being punished? Fear of just like somebody yelling, like fear that we're wondering what's going to happen next, or is it something that in their heart that's going to change their behavior? Well, I want to say that the effects of fear are that it oftentimes makes our kids take a step away from us. They want to avoid us. They don't want to be yelled at, and when they're doing something that we don't like, we want them to stay around, don't we? We don't want them to take a step away, whether it's a mental step away or a physical step away. When we wind up also when someone's yelling at a child, it'll shut down their brains. They're so scared of getting yelled at that they won't even think of like, should I have picked up my shoes? Should I have packed my backpack the right way? Should I be in bed right now? And so as a consequence, they can't solve problems because their brains have just fallen into their amygdala, which I talked about in the last talk. And when they're in a fight and flight mode, they can't solve problems very easily because all the blood has rushed to their amygdala in their brain, and thus their prefrontal cortex, where they make good decisions, isn't activated very well. And so here it is, we're yelling at them, and they might actually physically do what it was that we wanted, but they might not have thought about why they did the behavior that we're getting so mad about, or, thinking about what might happen next time. And if they can't solve problems, then oftentimes, because they're so scared, they'll look to others to solve their problems for them. They'll gravitate to kids that can solve the problems, and they might not be the kind of kids that you want in their lives. Maybe they are, but I'm just thinking that maybe we want our kids to be able to solve problems. And I want to say that as we yell at kids and we shut down their brains, we can wind up creating followers in ways that we never intended. We're just mad, we don't mean to create fear. We just want the toys to be picked up. We want the homework to be done. We want whatever it is. And it's like, as we shut down their brains and create followers, we've just created a complication, an unintended consequence that we didn't mean to. So I want to take a really quick poll, and I'm going to ask my friend Sherry to give me the results because I can't see the chat box, but I want you to take this poll for me. I want you to tell me if you think nagging works. Put in a 1 if you think nagging works all the time. If you think it never works, put in a 2. If you say that you never nag, so it's not a problem, put in a 3, or put in a 4. Oops, I'm so sorry. Put in a 4 if it works sometimes, but you use it all the time. So I'm going to give you a second to go ahead and type in something into the chat box, and I'll let Sherry read the results to us.
We have all 2s and 4s, but more 4s than 2s. How's that?
Okay, I would say it's pretty standard. There's something about nagging. It is so natural for parents to nag kids, to remind them to keep doing it all the time. So yelling had complications. And now I'm going to say that nagging also has complications. It does work sometimes. It might take 5 times to remind a kid to pick up their shoes or something like that. But in the end, they wind up not taking us very seriously. They don't really have to pick up their shoes or whatever it is. I'm going to use shoes as an example, because they know that mom's going to remind them 4 or 5 more times, or dad's going to tell them 6 times, or maybe it's only 2 for dads, and maybe it takes mom 4 or something like that. Whatever the equation is, they don't take us seriously the first time, do they? They know that nothing's going to happen. And it winds up letting our kids not take responsibility for the activity in the first place. If they leave their shoes wherever they want to in the house, they don't have to put them in the right place, because they know I'm going to pick on mom's going to nag them to put them in the right place. So why bother putting them in the right place in the first place? Because mom will tell me where she wants them today. And they can probably guess where they're supposed to be, but they wind up, the unintended consequence is that it can actually create entitled and lazy kids. I work with families regularly. I do parent coaching as well as things like these lectures. And I have parents who tell me their kids are lazy. And we all certainly in the Bay Area know people who have kids that feel entitled. And this kind of nagging, and where we're helicoptering in, it can actually create lazy and entitled kids, because they don't have to take responsibility. So they'll just wait until mom or dad nags them and gets upset or whatever. And then they'll go pick up their shoes or pack their backpack or go to bed or get off electronics or something like that. But they don't have to do it the first time or even the 5th time, because mom and dad are taking responsibility, not the kid. So how about punishing? It's something else that happens when we get mad. I want to say that it works sometimes too, but when we punish our kids, and it might be go to bed early, it might be you have to get off electronics, you're going to lose your phone for the day or something like that for older kids. When we take away something, when we punish them, when we send them to their room or whatever it is, who do you think our kids are mad at when we punish them? They're usually mad at you for punishing them, as opposed to, I left my shoes in the living room and I should have put them out in the cubbies in the garage. And they're not mad at themselves for having made the poor decision to leave their shoes in the wrong place, or to not get off screens at the right time, or to not get to bed at the right time. And so when they're sitting in their room, or they don't have their electronics or whatever it is, they're just mad at you. They're just seething at you. And as kids get older, the amount of resentment that they create towards mom and dad lasts longer. And that's kind of a complication that we want them to be mad at themselves, and we want them to change their behavior. We don't want them to get angry back at us. They did the behavior that's making us mad, but we don't want that. But here we've given them a reason to be mad at us now. So what's the long-term consequence of all this anger? Well, I want to say that anger in households, it winds up destroying relationships, and lots of anger destroys relationships a lot. And I want to talk about things we can do in our households that we might want to create instead of anger. Like, what is it that we would like in our households? It's like, we'd like obedience, order, just things on the list, peace and quiet. Like, lots of families want to have peace and quiet in their household. How about getting chores done just without anybody giving any grief or anything? I think that respect and happiness, all the things on this list, are things that we want in our household. But how do we get it? I'm not sure sometimes how we get it. One of the things that's going to happen in my recommendations to you is that as we communicate, it's communication with your kids. It's going to build a long-term relationship. And I want that for all of you. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to do, I'm going to talk about how good communication, it's good communication that's going to get you through parenthood. And a lot of you have a long distance to go through getting through the elementary and high school years after you get through the preschool years. So I want to talk about how we can create safe relationships with our kids so that you can have sort of a 1, 2, 3 step. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about how to create a relationship safety team in your house. And I want you to do that. It's got 3 parts to it. We have you as number 1 part of the team. We have your spouse or significant other as another. And we have your family, enrolling your family in your safety team. First up, we're going to start with you. What is it that you can do as a parent to keep yourself calm? I want you to, first of all, as you get angry at your kids, I want you to start thinking, it's really hard to do sometimes, but I want you to start thinking about what your anger feels like. I have one of my best friends is a marriage and family therapist, and she says, you want to recognize yourself going up anger mountain. Instead of being at the top of the mountain blowing your top, you want to figure out what it is that you start feeling like before you blow your top. And so it might be, you might sweat, you might have muscle tension, your neck, like I'm a neck and shoulder kind of tension person. You want to figure that out, like just be able to see some signs and know that you need to figure out how to get yourself out of a situation. You want to recognize that you're going into fight or flight mode. I was just talking about fight or flight mode with our kids and how fear and things send them into fight or flight mode. Well, when we're angry, we're in fight or flight mode, and our prefrontal cortex gets shut down. So we want to figure out how we prevent ourselves from getting all the way into fight or flight mode. And as we're going there, we need to pull ourselves back. And to do that, you need to try to not get triggered by what your kids are doing. All that list that we spent time at the beginning of the presentation talking about, that's making us mad, whether it's disobedience or whining and all those kind of things, we want to be able to go brain dead And I had talked about this in a previous presentation. We want to not engage with our kids. When our kids have chosen not to put their shoes in the right place, I want to just say, oh, this is so sad. You decided not to put away your shoes. Oh, I'm going to have to do something about that. And notice how my voice is calm. I want you to have a calm voice like that, even if inside you're angry and mad. I want you to practice saying, oh, I know, Mom, I need something. I need milk right now. I can't do this or that. Or it's like, I know, I'll be there in a minute. I want you to not let yourself get triggered and say, I already told you 4 times to do this. I don't, it's like, I want you to stop saying those words. I want you to stop arguing back with your kids, because one of the things that they like to do, Mom, I want a cookie right now. It's like, you've already had 4 cookies. I can't believe you want another cookie. And it's like, you want to say like, oh, I can see, I know you want another cookie. That's so sad. You're not going to get another cookie. So you need to basically ignore their whining and complaining and give them love and empathy is what I'd suggest. Training yourself to go, oh, I know. And when they're disappointed in not getting the cookie or you not doing their chores for them or something like that, I want you to say, oh, that's so sad. I can see that you didn't want to do your chores today. Yeah, what a bummer. I bet you're tired. It's like, yeah, well, you still have to do your chores instead of arguing with them about it. And they might be yelling at you, but I want you to not yell back. I want you to have these brain dead phrases. Pick one, saying like, oh, I know. Like, that's so stupid, Mom. I know. And if those of you who have older kids that might be getting more flack from them, maybe the disrespect and such, I want you to know that I don't believe that you should allow disrespect in your household, but you shouldn't argue about it when they're giving you the disrespect. You should wait until later when they're calm and you're calm and you can say, you know, Sherry, yesterday when you were talking to me with that tone of voice, it really hurt my feelings. Can we talk about that? And Sherry and I would be calm and we could have a discussion. And oftentimes your child, when they're calm, they'll say, yeah, I was really upset, Mom. My friend really made me mad. And I was taking it out on you. I mean, as our kids have a relationship and a trusting relationship that they know that they can talk to us when things aren't upset, meaning that we're not triggered. I'm not triggered in my amygdala, in my fight and flight, and they aren't either. We can have a conversation about us being triggered, about things that might trigger us. And I want you to do that, but I want you to do it later, not in the moment. I also want you're still safety team member number 1. I want you to separate yourself if you have to. If you know that you're going to blow your top, that you're going up Anger Mountain and you're going to blow your top, I want you to get out of there. I want you to separate yourself. I don't want you to sit there and start yelling and screaming. If you're yelling and screaming, I want you to say, hey, I need to get out of here. And I want you to have some sort of mindfulness technique. There's deep breathing is always something that people talk about. You know, we have all these iPhones and stuff like, different phones. Use your phone, use some of those calming apps, Headspace or Calm or whatever. I had one of my young friends from church. She taught me something that her counselor taught her. It's called lemon squeezes. And the counselor said, squeeze your hands really tight like lemons, then let them go. Practice lemon squeezes. It's free, it's cheap, it's easy. You don't need a phone to do it. I want you to think about that. Take deep breaths. Whatever you do, get yourself out of there and practice something. It could just be breathing deep, whatever works for you. But I want you to know that blowing your top is the thing that you want to avoid. And we want to also know that if we really can't get there, if we can't train ourselves to have mindfulness or whatever, get out of Dodge when we are blowing it, I want you to think about professional help. I think that there's a lot of good value for people who are having trouble struggling with keeping their anger under control is one of the options. I want to move on now to team member number 2, and that is our spouse or partner. I want you to develop a couple of things between the two of you that could be verbal signals It could also be, I'll talk about other kinds of signals, but the verbal signal might be something like, um, honey, the cat, we had a cat growing up. Honey, the cat's water dish needs to be changed. When my husband starts yelling at the kids, I'll just do some non sequitur that he and I agree that when I say the water dish needs to be changed, it means, honey, you're kind of getting out of control. I'll take over. It's a signal that doesn't have to do with, you know, how you might have a spouse or partner who says, honey, you're getting upset. You have to leave. Get out of here. And it's like, that's just a little too in your face, because then might start arguing with your partner. I am not upset. I'm fine. My kid hasn't done, this kid hasn't done that or whatever. And you might start arguing with your spouse. You don't want to do that. Set up ahead of time. That means you and your spouse or partner are going to talk about this offline ahead of time and say, hey, let's come up with a verbal signal. It might be, hey, do you know where the purple pen is, honey? Could be something like that. You develop your own signal, and it's going to be off topic, and it's meant to distract as well as signal in the brain of the person who's losing their cool. It's meant to signal your team member, your partner's supposed to be saying, hey, where's the purple pen? And you're going like, oh, purple pen means I'm out of control. I need to get out of here. My spouse is going to take over for me. Then I also want you to think about, if verbal signals, whether they work for you or not, I also want you to think about having physical signals. I want you to have physical cues. It might be that you pat your partner on the back. It might be that you pull your ear to say, honey, a tap on the head. It could be, I always tell this story about my husband and I. We've been married almost 30 years, but it took about 15 years into our marriage when we developed a physical signal where my husband drives in the car a little faster than I like, and he sometimes tailgates more than I'd like. And it just drives me crazy, and I get really anxious. And I would always say, honey, you're driving too fast, honey, and he'd go like, oh my gosh. And my sons, they would go, oh, mom. And so we figured out a signal between the two of us where all of my concerns would be on a tap. And we had a discussion. This was when we weren't driving. We had a long discussion about why I'm anxious about it, why it scares me. And he had a discussion about what my voice did to him while he was driving, because he got defensive, understandably got defensive. And so we came up with a signal where if he was driving, I would just tap his leg. And that simple tap on his leg said, honey, could you slow down? And I never have to say any words anymore. So I want you to think of a tap like that for you and your partner that you could use. I want to say there was a little complication in that about 6 months ago in the pandemic, I tapped my husband was driving, and I tapped him on the shoulder, and he goes, what? I'm not driving fast. And it's like, honey, it was your leg is the signal, not the shoulder. It was a love tap. So it was just kind of a funny, we both laughed about it. But make sure you get your signal straight is the moral of that story. I want you to figure something out so that you can know that your partner has your back, and give each other something to work with that you talk about offline, so that it's set up ahead of time. And that when you see that signal coming at you, you know that it's coming at you with love and not with controlling, not with interfering or anything like that. It's like with love, your partner is going to be doing that for you. I also want your spouse or partner to be able to, do the, I got your back. One of my families that I work with, the wife, she was just getting really upset at her daughters, and the husband said, go for a walk, honey. It could be go for a bath. It could be whatever. But where your spouse can be able to lovingly say, like, I got this. Why don't you go take care of yourself? And I want you to be able to set up in your house a place where you're allowed to go to calm down in a loving way. And it might be the bathtub. It could be just a walk. I want it set up so that everybody knows it's your calm down space, and not to enter it while you're trying to calm down. Can't be there for 6 hours or anything like that, but for a long enough time, and you as a family decide what it is. And I want you to make sure as well in your relationship with your spouse or partner that that you have some me time built in. I know in our working world around here in Silicon Valley, a lot of us have 2 working spouses and no extra time or whatever. I want you to be able to build in just a little time, even if it's only 5 minutes. Just give each other a break, and know that you're going to have the kids and your partner's going to have a break, and they give it back to you. I think it's super healthy, and I want you to figure that, have a thought about that. Okay, safety team number 3, it's your children. Can you believe it that they could actually be on the relationship safety team? I know it's kind of even hard to think about recruiting your children to help control your anger. But just like your spouse and all the things we talked about with your spouse, your children can be great assets to you. And it also allows you as a parent to model for your kids how to deal with anger, how to be honest about it. I want you to be able to develop verbal signals with your kids as well as nonverbal signals. I know that it's possible for kids to come up with all sorts of creative ideas. And the way that I recommend that people do this is I like the concept of family meetings. And I want to have a family meeting to brainstorm solutions for how to deal with mom's anger, or, in my case, I'm a mom, and how you become a team to deal with anger in your household. Because your kids are getting angry probably about different things. They're going to have, if they're not tweens yet, they're going to go through, emotional roller coaster time of their life if they're not tantruming at the terrible 2s or 3s or whatever. But I want you to recognize it as something that you can come together as a team and try to solve. I want you to think about ways to handle the anger, like, hey, mom is going to have a calm down space in her bedroom. And when mom announces that she's going to calm down, it means that no one's allowed to follow mom into the bedroom or the bathroom or wherever you're trying to take refuge. And you could set a timer as you go away into calm down time. You could say, I'm too upset right now. I'm going to set a timer for 5 minutes and I'm going to go. I'll be back. And your kids, they might still be fighting or whatever, but you can just announce that, it's like for the safety of your whole family, you're going to do that. And in a family meeting, I know a lot of you have really young kids, but I have had families who have really young kids, and family meetings are really short because the attention span is really short. Even for older kids, the family meetings shouldn't be long, and you should tackle one issue at a time. And you want to develop signals with your kids so that they can feel safe in telling you that they are scared, in telling you that they can tell that you're getting upset. Here you are yelling at them about shoes. There might be a physical signal in your house. I like to suggest this to families, especially if you have young kids. Everybody has too many stuffed animals, right? Pick a stuffed animal, a different one for everyone in your household. Maybe it's a bear for somebody, and a rabbit, and a turtle, and a skunk or something like that. Maybe not a skunk, that has bad, maybe. But let's say an elephant. And you put them on a counter in the kitchen area. Let's say that's your main area that everybody is in your house. And if somebody's getting upset, one of the team members in your family, which all of you are members of the same team, can go pick off one of the ones. If mom's the elephant, let's just say the elephant in the room is mom. And if mom's getting upset, little Joey can go over to the counter and get the elephant and just hand it to mom. And everyone knows that when anyone hands the elephant to mom, it means, I love you, mom. I can tell that you're upset. Why don't you go have some calm down time? And that elephant could do that. Same could be true for the little bunny. Let's say Joey's signal is the bunny and he's having a tantrum, and mom could go over to the counter and take the bunny and give it to Joey and say, and it says, Joey already knows, it says, I love you. I can tell that you're upset. Why don't you go have some calm down time? And one of the things in our parenting that a lot of times we want to say, go to your room, because they're getting upset, they're loud, or whatever. It's like, we want to say, go to your room. And I want to prevent people from yelling at kids to go to their room. I want them to go get a bunny and say, I love you. Why don't you go to your room and calm down? They might throw the bunny back at you and be so mad. It's like, that's okay, because in the next family meeting, you're going to talk about, Bunny didn't deserve that. How can we deal with that? What else? What could we use another signal? You're going to brainstorm over a period of time, coming up with different solutions, because as most of you who are working people, solutions don't come in a day. They come over time. And you might try something and it might be 50% successful. So you keep tweaking it when you're at work. I want you to think of that as your family. I want you to keep tweaking things until they work. If you in your household have a lot of problems putting kids to bed, I want you to have a little family meeting and say, we're having trouble getting everyone to bed, and it's making mommy really upset because mom and dad are up till 10 at night trying to put you to bed, and we don't have any free time to refresh ourselves. And that really makes mommy mad. And so we need to talk about, how do we get into bed earlier? What is it that we need as a family? Is it bath time's taking too long? Is it that kids keep saying, I want water? Talk about all those things and just work on that one issue of getting to bed. Forget about waking up in the morning or the food issues or whatever else is going on, or putting away shoes or chores or something like that. Once you put those on hold, just work on one thing at a time till you can kind of make progress, and your family as a team comes together to solve that. And anger can be one of those topics that you work on, like mom's getting really angry about shoes not being put away. That could be the family meeting topic. And you talk about, what is it that I could signal that you kids haven't put away your shoes? What happens to shoes that don't get put away? Decide as a family what happens to shoes. If mom touches those shoes, where do they go? Do they go away for a month? Do they get, given away? Do they get, does that kid get extra chores? You guys decide as a team what's a logical consequence, so that when a kid happens to not put away their shoes, the kid already knows what's going to happen. So basically they chose to not put away their shoes because they know that they're going to have to scrub the floor, let's just say, or they're going to have to rake leaves or dust or something like that. They already know that they have to do a chore because mom did a chore for them. So I want you to think about that. And I think as young families have these little small family meetings to tackle a problem, where you make them recognize we have a problem together, we need to solve it together. Your kids might go, oh, I don't want to. Oh, it's like, oh, that's so sad. We're going to solve this one little problem together, and we're going to have these meetings regularly. And you're going to set boundaries and just say, we're going to do it before movie night on Friday nights, or we're going to do it. Maybe it's before we have Sunday morning donuts, or, maybe there's a little, carrot at the end of the stick of, like, we have this family meeting, we talk about this one topic, and then we're gonna go do our next fun thing. So I want you to think about that, how to integrate that. I also want to appreciate that as you do this step by step with these family meetings, showing how to solve problems, it's great modeling for problem solving, how kids solve their own problems. You know how I talked about fear a little while ago, how it shuts down the brain? We want to continually open our kids' brains, and having family meetings and allowing our kids to come up with all sorts of different solutions. Like with going to bed at night, like, well, how should we be more creative about going to bed? Is there something that we can do? Can we have maybe somebody comes up with the idea, let's have a music selection that's 3 minutes long or 10 minutes long or whatever. And we try that for a week and see if that, we have to brush our teeth and get our jammies on in that amount of time, and see if it works. And we just try it for a week and see if it works. And if it didn't work, we're going to try something else next week, and let your kids come up with different ideas. I have a whole podcast on family meetings and how to brainstorm and stuff like that. And I want you to model that and let your kids' brains keep open when these problems come up in your family, when these areas of disobedience or whatever come in. I want you to say, oh, it's just an opportunity to problem solve. Think of it more positively than normally we think of it as pretty negative, like, oh my God, the shoes are all over the place. It's like, it's just a problem to be solved. And I want you to use family meetings to help solve those problems. What else we got? So, what is that goal? I'm going to say that we're going to prevent anger by building trusting relationships, having those family meetings, being willing to listen to ideas from our kids. It allows them to know that we trust their opinion, we value their opinions, and that as we value their opinions, we're going to have a trusting relationship that they feel like they can tell us different things. They can have bad ideas and we won't call them out and say they're stupid or anything like that. And I want you to do something that helps. Oh, we're going to move now into a different thing. So we got our family team, right? We have your spouse or partner, and we have your kids. Everybody's on the safety team, the relationship safety team. But I'm going to go over really quick a couple of things that will help prevent triggers. And I have covered these in other lectures before. So all those things we talked about at the beginning that trigger us, I want to talk about what is it that we could just prevent anger from happening in the first place. And those things are doing things like setting loving limits. And loving limits is where you state what you will do and you keep it positive. Like, I read books to bed at bedtime to kids who've brushed their teeth. And it automatically implies what? It automatically implies I don't need to give a lecture. It means that if my child doesn't brush their teeth, they're not going to get given books. I'm not going to read them a book. Now, I know that when my kids were growing up, it was one of the most special times was being able to read books to my kid. And my kids always loved it too. So if I took away books, it would make them upset and they might have a tantrum about it, but they had a choice. They could choose to brush their teeth and have books, or they could choose not to brush their teeth and not have books. So it's their choice. And I'm going to lovingly state positively what it is. So notice I don't say, I'm not reading you books if you don't brush your teeth. And I'm not going to have a battle about brushing teeth. It automatically implies that if they choose not to brush their teeth, I'm just not going to read books. I'm not going to have a battle. I'm not going to have, they might have a tantrum, and that's okay. I need to be prepared for that. It's like I serve dinner to kids who've put away their shoes. And there's an implication in that, isn't it? There's an implication that I'm not serving dinner to Joey if he doesn't put away his shoes. It's okay with me if he doesn't have dinner tonight. It's not going to be open snack pantry time after dinner. I make that really clear in my family boundaries, but I allow him to choose not to put away his shoes. He can keep playing if he wants, but at some point he's going to get hungry. And you have to know a little bit what your kids' motivators are, what they're in order for it to really work, like reading books. If you have a kid who hates books being read to them, then that wouldn't be a good motivator. But it might be making pancakes in the morning. It's like, oh, I make pancakes in the morning to kids who come to the breakfast table dressed. If you're having problems in the morning with getting ready for school. Another technique that I want to give you is that you give choices. By giving loving limits, there's kind of choices implied, but I also want you to just give obvious choices. Our kids, no matter their age, whether they're preschoolers or even college kids, but high school kids, they want some control over their lives. And giving control, as much control as we can to them, is huge to them. And we want to do it so that the kid isn't cornered into a box with yes or no, like, pick up your shoes right now. I'm so mad, pick up your shoes right now. Well, I'm just triggering my anger, their anger, like I'm nagging and stuff like that. I just want to say, would you like to pick up your shoes and put them in this box, or would you like to put them out in the garage? Notice I gave choices that I liked. I didn't care if they were going in the box. I didn't care if they were going in the garage. I just wanted them out of the living room, let's say. And I didn't corner myself into a box by having a yes, no question, because some of you have kids that no matter what you ask them, they'll say no. Like, would you like eat your peanut butter jelly sandwich? And you know they love peanut butter. No, I don't want to. I don't want to do it right now. And so we're going to give as many choices as we can so that we don't get cornered into that box. And when you have young kids, I think that it's just the most fun giving really funny, creative choices. Like, would you like to skip to the car or walk backwards to the car? If you're having trouble with transitioning between the car and school or the car and wherever, the park, would you like to leave the park in 10 minutes or 15 minutes? You don't care which one. You're willing to stay for 15 minutes, but you don't care. You let them choose. Who cares? Instead of just saying, we're leaving now, you give your kid a warning and then you follow through on it. And they might have a tantrum after 15 minutes, still not wanting to come. It's like, oh, this is so sad. Yeah, you chose 15 minutes. And you can give them love and empathy and drag them off to the car if you need to. But you're going to keep giving them lots of choices. Would you like to go to bed slithering on your stomach, or would you like to fly on daddy's shoulders to bed? Would you like to brush your top teeth first or your bottom teeth? Notice I'm not giving them an option to brush their teeth. If it's not one of the options in your house, you don't give them an option. Top teeth, bottom teeth. Would you like to put your pajamas on first or brush your teeth first? You really don't care. Would you like to do your spelling homework first, or would you like to do your science homework first? Would you like to do your homework in the kitchen, or would you like to do it in out on the back porch? You don't care as long as they're doing their homework. So I want you to practice giving as many choices as possible. And the added benefit is that it wakes up their brains. If you're giving choices when things are calm, it wakes up their brains and they go like, oh, what do I want? Do I want to leave the park in 10 minutes or 15 minutes? Like, oh, probably 15. I always want the longer. And you've learned a little math with them, stuff like that, in order for them to learn that. You allow them to set the timer for 10 minutes or 15 minutes. Would you like to set the timer, or would you like mommy to set the timer? You don't care as long as the timer gets set. So I want you to activate their brains and really only give choices you like, so that you can make it so that there's less anger in your house from the get-go, as opposed to using all the techniques for the safety team that we talked about for when things are getting angry. I want you to just prevent it. And so giving setting loving limits, positive loving limits, and using choices is hugely helpful in your house. I also want you to allow mistakes. When a kid, in this case, in this picture, dumps their ice cream over, and it's like, I want you to just say, oh, wow, that's so sad. I want you to give them empathy. Yeah, I know. It's like, it's so sad that the ice cream fell, or I know you would like another cookie, or, oh, I know you'd like to stay and watch another episode of Sesame Street, but like, yeah, it's time to go to bed now. And they can be upset, and they can make a mistake where they turn in a paper at school and they get a bad grade in their minds. And it's like, love and empathy, like, yeah, I wonder what you could do next time that would prevent that. I wonder what they could do next time to prevent the ice cream from falling over. Maybe they get a cup. You know, a lot of parents will encourage their kid to have a cone and a cup next door so that they can dump it if they need to. But instead of saying, I told you to hold your ice cream differently, I told you to do this or that, I want you to just say, oh, wow, that's a bummer. That happened to you. Oh, you forgot your coat and it's really cold out today. Wow, that's so sad. Wonder what you're going to do next time. I'm not going to give lectures. I'm not going to say, I told you to bring your coat or something like that. It's like, oh, wow. Yeah, that's a bummer. You're cold. And I'll let my kid be cold. I might give him a hug or two to warm him up, but I want them to be responsible for their stuff. And I want to know that everybody makes mistakes. I want their brains activated to get into problem solving mode so that things don't happen to them all the time. So what's my big observation? I said this before, that communication builds relationships. And I want you to communicate with your kids. I want to say that good communication is what's going to get you through parenthood. Even with the ups and downs of things that happen, whether your kid gets on a team or not a team, or whether they can get to bed on time or whatever. It's like, as your kids grow, if you can talk to them about things when things aren't upsetting to everyone, you're going to make it through parenthood. You'll make it through everything, because that communication and that trust that communication builds is going to be what allows you to get past those and to be able to solve problems together. One, I want to tell you as we finish up, one fun story that I read about as I was researching to do this topic when I wrote this presentation a year ago. And I call it cheese pizza. It was a young mom who had like a kindergartner, first grader. And she had been raised by parents who had no structure in her life at all. It was just chaos, she said. And she was determined not to raise her child like that. And so she and her son set up a signal, because we were talking about signals in this presentation. And they set up a signal that said, if her son ever came to her and said cheese pizza, it would mean, and mom agreed, it would mean that mom would take a few deep breaths and count to 10, and then say what? It would mean that the son was going to be telling mom something that she probably won't like, but to prepare her. And so she thought she was being such a great mom, and she's like, sends them off to school on the school bus or whatever. And she's like, she thought that he wouldn't eat it anytime soon. Well, a week after school started, he comes home and he goes, cheese pizza. And mom was just like, oh my God, he's using cheese pizza. And she remembered she's supposed to take a few deep breaths and count to 10. And then she could say, tell me. And he told her that he had put holes in his brand new pants that they had bought for school, um, because he and his friend Freddie were playing on the playground, and and he fell and he tore his pants. And he wanted to be able to tell mom that problem that happened without mom getting upset, because mom normally would have looked at his pants and yelled at him, why did you do that? Oh my gosh. And thought that he would be, was being, disobedient, stupid, or whatever, careless. And having a signal like cheese pizza allowed her son to trust her that he wasn't going to get yelled at, that he would have enough time to tell her what really happened without mom getting upset, and that they could go into problem solving mode of like, I wonder what we're going to do. Maybe he'd have to earn some money to buy new pants. Maybe they would go to grandma's and sew up the knees or something like that. Maybe he'd have to have funny looking patches on his knees in the future. But it gave them a lot of trust in their relationship. It allowed them to problem solve. And it was just a wonderful, adorable signal. And I want you to have those signals. I want you to have a cheese pizza signal for each of your kids should have a different signal. They can pick out what the signal is too. But as they go all the way through, even college, I want you to have a signal that they can say, I have to tell you something, mom or dad, and I want to be able to trust that you're going to listen till the end, and then we'll talk about it and work on it. So I just love that story. And I also want you to know that as you move through parenthood, I have a podcast. It's called Parenting Decoded. Some of you already know about that podcast. And it has, if you want some more information on, like I was talking about, choices and boundaries, the setting loving limits, dealing with tantrums, I have a bunch of different podcasts that you could listen to about that, those things. I also have a YouTube channel that, sorry, I think I have to go back. Sorry. It's called Parenting Decoded as well, that you could listen to this lecture. This lecture is going to be put up on YouTube. And I have a various other lectures as well, getting kids to listen. Solving tantrums is even one. Some of you might need that. And you can always get a hold of me. Send me email if you have questions or problems that you need help with. I have my Parenting Decoded website that has lots of different resources on it. I have a fun group on Facebook called Parenting Decoded 2021. Someday I will figure out how to update that year, but I haven't yet. Instagram, follow me. I have a monthly newsletter. If you want to know when I teach and where I teach and where I give lectures, sign up for my newsletter. It's just right on my website. There's a link for it. I also teach a Love and Logic parenting class sometimes. The pandemic's made it a little bit difficult, but I'll probably teach it again in the fall. If you want to be up to date on that, my newsletter would be a good place. But my website has it on it too. But you could also hire me as a private coach if you think that you would like just some help in dealing with real specific issues in your household. I would love to do that. And that's it. Thanks so much for coming and listening in. I will entertain questions offline.